Tracy Wilson, thank you for joining me today. You have an exciting new role, but we'll talk a little bit first about the history that you have in the co-working world. And I am thrilled to get some updates about what you're up to now and how that kind of crisscrosses into the co-working world. So Tracy, I feel you've done GWA webinars before. I'm not sure you haven't been on the podcast before though. So first, Everything Co-working podcast. I think I've had Keith on and Scott's been on and I'm trying to think if Laurent's been on. So Tracy, you are a partner with PAC, which is a regional brand in California and Nevada. And what am I missing? California and Nevada.
Currently.
With, yeah,
Nevada.
20 locations.
Right, 18, and some kind of hopefully soon to be additional as well.
I know you guys are always on the move. And then also partner with CloudVO, which is a virtual office meeting room partner. I'll let you talk a little bit more about that. And then at the end of 2020, you'd been doing this for a long time and decided time for a change and time to do something that you were passionate about besides workspace, and found an opportunity that again happened to dovetail back into workspace. So you are now the co-founder and COO of Super. Is that the end of the company name, Super?
Well, it's an acronym,
Okay.
As it happens, for single-use plastics elimination or reduction. So at first I thought it sounded a little rah, but then of course, when you realize it's a very helpful acronym for what we are doing, it's a good name.
It's a perfect name. Okay. So tell us, tee us up here a little bit about your co-working background and then transition at the end of 2020 and what you're up to now. And then we'll kind of get into the details about what that looks like for co-working.
Okay. I am one of the OGs in the serviced office industry, actually. My father, in fact, started Executive Suites in the 70s in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I quite literally grew up. Anytime I had a break from school, I was in the office doing a little work.
Wait, how did Dad get into this? Was he an attorney or like a user or real estate guy who?
No, it was kind of by accident. Like there's a number of these cases where he actually he used to sell. This is an industry that is long gone. Business forms, and we had paper for everything, and branded paper. You didn't run a business without your forms, and triplicate even, and things like that. So he had a company where he sold custom business forms for all sorts of businesses. He and his partner had gone off on their own looking for office space, and they could only get the kind of lease in the place they wanted to be that was actually space more than they needed. So they thought, what the heck, they were going to grow. Every new business is going to grow,
of course,
and
can't start a business if you're not overly optimistic, Tracy.
Exactly. So they took the space, and then, to kind of help things out, and they knew folks that kind of needed space, so they kind of did a few little sublets here, and then what the heck, they had the staff, so they might as well have the staff kind of help, and then the meeting room, and all right, we'll share. And next thing you know, we're kind of actually a little bit inundated by people saying, can I get one of those spots in there? And it actually was complete happenstance that suddenly they were kind of getting, well, this kind of, adding on some things, and it's leveraging our employees, and this is kind of helping us with some costs, and it's starting to make money. And so they got a little bigger on the space needs, and they were still doing their business forums. But so over time, it ended up being that the partnership broke down, and my father just went forward in that new model, and he ultimately had a variety of iterations, but 5 pretty large locations around the San Francisco Bay Area, and then in fact one in Sacramento, which is how I ultimately came to work for him full time, was as a favor. I was kind of transitioning between another job in the nonprofit industry, thinking about going to grad school, and he asked if I could just kind of make a little pit stop and help him out along the way. Since I knew the industry, of course, he trusted me and all that. And so I did, and then it ended up being a really lucky, delightful experience to have a father-daughter team. And so I ended up, my dad started taking longer and longer vacations. I'm not kidding. It was, a month in Europe, and then it was, well, we'll be back in 3 months. And even then there wasn't before cell phones. And so it was kind of, you got this. It's like, I'll see ya. So in the, he sold out actually in the roll up of Advantis, which then became Regis in the late 90s, and he sold and kind of retired, except for this one Sacramento location. So I kind of stayed on part-time and ran it until in 2006. I knew them from the industry, and they invited me to join them as Laurent Delon and Scott Chambers. And so I joined with them as a partner for what's now Pacific Workplaces. So we've been together, shockingly, 15 years. There's some interesting times, of course. And we've grown then to the 18 and growing locations. And, I've had for quite a few years, there's been a little bit, I think part of it is by happenstance that it's not a lot of people's careers just sort of happen. And that's certainly the case. And it's been enjoyable, and I've worked, just have great partners, and we truly are family, from my father to the team that is with Pacific. We're family. But it's been a bit of, there's kind of got to be more. And is there something that there was just something in me that wanted to do something kind of a little bit bigger from a making a bigger kind of well, it ended up being environment is really sort of been a passion thing. So I've been wringing my hands about particularly plastic pollution and our throwaway society and all of these things. My Berkeley roots, I guess, kind of run deep in that sense. There's a little bit of hippie in me, I suppose, despite being a business owner. And I've kind of fretted it. I'm a parent. My stepchildren have grandchildren or have children now. So, I think about the future and what we're all doing in the world. And I will say that COVID just kind of was the thing that I realized the entire world clearly can change in almost a minute. And there was an if not now when. And I decided it was time to make a change. So at end of 2020, I left my day job in operations with Pacific. I do a tiny bit of work with them on the kind of back end with Scott Chambers, but other than that, I just decided that I was going to do something in the area of single-use plastics, reduction of the plastic pollution industry. And I know I told you at that point when I left the GWA advisory board that I was aware that I have no work experience in environmental issues or plastics. I have no actual education in that either. And somehow I just, in my soul or whatever it is, inner being, knew something was gonna show up. So I'm hopefully I'm not jumping ahead, but I ended up deciding that, well, I couldn't fix the past lack of work experience, but I could certainly fix the future education part right away. So I signed up for a class through UC Berkeley Extension and on the circular economy, and got into that. And as it happened, the professor, Manuel Makeda, had made kind of a side comment at one point during one of the webinars about the fact that he had started at the end of 2019 a nonprofit called SUPER, again, single-use plastics elimination or reduction. And it was a third-party certification program for companies that want to certify their workplaces as either eliminating or greatly reducing the use of single-use plastics in their operations and coming up with other alternatives. And oddly, I know workplaces. So I sent a little email after class and said, I'd love to know more for Pacific Workplaces and CloudVO, and perhaps I could share some information. And we ended up talking quite a bit. And I had commented, well, kind of bad timing that you launched this for companies to do this in their workspaces just about the time that everybody sent everyone away from their workspaces. But as it happens, co-working industry still has people in it. I mean, we're operational, and we're actually sort of the stopgap for a lot of these people who can't be at home right now. And so, and in addition, we're a disruptive industry. I mean, we've kind of taken real estate and office space as a place you just go to, the place where services are done for people to be productive. So I thought, what better place to launch a pilot? And so I said, I know a few people in the industry, and let me see if we can start moving this forward. And I don't know, it feels very much, when I've heard co-working stories and serendipity and all of those terms we've used these years, it feels very much like that. This sort of co-working ethos has just manifested itself. And as much as I wanted to get away, it's all, I'm back just in a different way. And now just seeing that new vision, just so delighted for the future of what co-working can do to make a difference to the environment. Frankly, there's so many thousands of us now, locations, and that we can make a big difference. So,
and just to mention, the ultimate sort of market for what Super is doing can be workplaces, but other forms. You mentioned cruise ships and
right.
Yeah.
So, the first actual two organizations that Manuel, as precedes me, landed was the state of Washington, their Department of Commerce, thanks to Governor Inslee, who anybody knows follows politics at all. He is very passionate about the environment. And so he wanted to pilot it within his Department of Commerce. So they have contracted with Super, though they've asked to put off the implementation until 2022 when they have their employees back in the office. And then the Presidio Graduate School in San Francisco signed on as well. And then we're currently actually in conversations with some big corporations. National Park Service is a call we have scheduled for next week. Actually some airports. And you mentioned, yes, a yachting company that is both in Europe and in the United States is considering it. There's market research companies, so all sorts of industries. And so co-working in a lot of ways is because of as I mentioned, the disruptiveness and the way in which many of us kind of see our businesses feels a bit like low-hanging fruit, with the way to really create the space and then go from there and really build it and get the dots on the map in addition to these other industries. So,
yeah, no, I love it. And, you talked at the beginning when we were chatting about, a lot of co-working space owners just like naturally think of, we're going to do this differently, right? Like things are, and it's a good time, to your point. In 2020, we realized, right, when you really need to, you can figure out how to do things differently. And I love leveraging that mindset to say, what else in our business could change? What's important to our members? So yeah, what does it mean? What's the mission? What's the role? What does it mean to, be Super certified? And I'd love to have you dive into some examples. Like plastic water bottles are the easy example, but you gave me one when we were talking, like the mints at the front desk. No, I wouldn't have thought of it, when you're kind of auditing. So yeah, tell us what does it look like to make this commitment?
It's actually quite simple, ultimately. It's an upstream solution to the plastics pollution problem. And what that means is that you don't buy single-use plastics. You look for other purchasing alternatives or operational alternatives to replace the use and toss product that you may be just sort of routinely buying without thinking about it at all. It's intended to be, from my view, a hospitality play, frankly, where you and it's a circular economy piece in which it's hyper localized. It's using things for a long period of time. It's keeping things out of the waste streams. So a downstream would be where you have the stuff and then you have to figure out what to do with it properly. This is, let's just not buy it. Let's look for all sorts of different ways in which, or other solutions in which to meet all the needs we need to meet for our clients and members to be productive and healthy and happy. And let's just look for different ways to do it. So water bottles are a great example. There's water in cans now. There's boxed water. There's filtered water systems. There's beautiful, beautiful big sort of glass jars of tureens with lemon or cucumbers or whatever. I'm always, especially a cucumber one, I'm always a fan, with a nice glass next to it. And that's a way to delight your customers and spare our earth and our waters and the living things on our planet, the toxins that are in plastics, which is a chemical product. So the way to do it is somebody says they're interested. We have an assessment. It's basically a question and answer system here. And sorry, I had something pop up. And you just go through it. It kind of requires somebody with a keen eye who will look around at those things like, oh, laminators. Do we really need to laminate every sign?
I love to laminate, Tracy. So totally.
There's the long-term lamination and we're closed for Monday, the 4th of July lamination. So, there's things that are, I guess your mother doesn't live here above the kitchen sink. Maybe is the one that you,
yeah.
that you have long term, but yeah. So really looking around, and so you identify what you have. What are we using here, and then send it in you submit it to Super, and then we review it, and come up with here's what you need to replace or eliminate in order to ultimately become certified. And it's a iterative process. It's often very regional. We try to be helpful in product ideas that we've come across and suggest them, but also again, products aren't available everywhere. So and it could be that somebody else comes across something that's even better. So it's definitely a wide open, ever-changing practice, which, as you just mentioned, I love the idea of just having things that you're always looking at better ways to do things and to delight your members. So you do that, then you have a period of 30 to 90 days that you may need in order to make those changes. They're not terribly difficult. It kind of depends on how quickly you want to move. And then at the point that the company is ready to do a secondary assessment, say what they are, and assuming they've met the things that need to be, then we would move to one of the tiered certification levels, which is bronze, which is actually hard to get. I mean, we this is serious. There's no point in not having this be where you're not really making a significant change in how you're doing things just to get a bronze certification. So there's bronze, silver, and actually gold is 100% elimination. And in our world of throwaway, that's an uber commitment to the conversation. Not to say you shouldn't shoot for it, but it's definitely, we have very high standards. So that's the process. And then from there, it's telling the world and your clients and continuing long-term engagement. We'll send you the Super certification seal, and hope that you announce to the world that your business's commitment to sustainability, and then share as it makes sense with your members. Some may not care why they have this beautiful big thing of chilled cucumber water, that it's in place of a plastic bottle. And they're just happy to have it, and that's all good. And others may just be, even an added piece to how much they love the co-working space because of what they're doing to delight them, and it's making a difference to the world.
Yeah, Tracy, I was going to ask, kind of what type of sort of mindset or, sort of framing are you in when you decide to do this? Because at first it'll be some extra work. I'll have to replace some things. I'll have to, maybe make some special communications to my members about, why and what are we doing? So yeah, how do you look at like the ROI of doing this?
Well, so a couple of things. One, because in certain parts of the world, like for example, in fact, on July 3rd, and in fact, July, you probably didn't know this, but it's Plastic Free July.
Oh,
So
no. Perfect timing.
Plastic Free July is a thing. And in fact, on July 3rd, the European Union, that was the date that the member states of the European Union needed to have in place the reduction of a whole list of single-use plastic items, that the EU, the European Union, the legislation went into effect on July 3rd. So they believe this list of things, water bottles are included, are easily replaceable, or alternatives are easily available. And so it's legislated. Not so much here in the United States, but I think you're probably not paying much attention if you don't realize that there is a conversation around climate change going on, and this is a part of that conversation. And there are a whole lot of consumers who you would probably like to be your members, who this is something for which they make a conscious decision. And so I think for a business owner to ignore it completely is a huge mistake. So just from that aspect alone, to close your sort of doors to those folks that this matters to, would not be a long-term business decision in my perspective. And like I said, there may be people who don't actually really care, but they like the end result. So you don't have to, you certainly don't have to turn anybody off by this process. So that reason, and then as far as ROI, one of the things with this pilot project, we're really, the Presidio Management School did do a project for Super to begin with, and they had some really great examples of if you have a big sort of campus, a Google or an Apple, and they get rid of all their plastic cutlery and things, how much they save on just reuse of things and so forth, and it can be quite extraordinary. For a co-working place, of course, we are not major consumers. I mean, collectively, when you add us all up, there's a lot here, but we're not major consumers. But we are using the opportunity to start getting some information of specific cost savings. At this point, it's really anecdotal. I mean, there's one one of the certified members just recently was telling me about how they used to get treats for all the members, and they come in the plastic clamshells, the pastries and the cookies and so forth.
Oh, yeah.
And they made an arrangement with a local bakery, and the local bakery is more than delighted to deliver the products, deliver them in paper, and which is then displayed on in a nice way in the location, and it is verifiably less expensive than the going out to the big box to get the products. So you can kind of imagine your members walking into these beautifully locally baked items that are fresh and have not arrived in a way in which they do any hundreds of years damage just by tossing that plastic thing away. So anecdotally, there, as far as our costs, the pilot for co-working locations specifically, it's just for co-working, we're charging $99 for the onboarding and the assessment and the review, and then the first year certification should they meet that level is $50. So to the extent that $149 is something that just the process alone, engaging in what you're using and what other alternatives might be there, and working with the super team on options, I will say so myself. I think that's worth every bit of $149. Um, so if that kind of answers the question where we are, some of it's to be determined as we go forward.
Yeah. Well, I'm also thinking, I mean, in terms of ROI, like there's just a lot of benefits around, to your point, thinking about, oh, we just do this because it's how we've always done it. Like, well, we always get croissants and pastries in these plastic shells, and maybe there's a better outcome for everyone. For you, the business, your members appreciate it. The water, I am such a sucker for the hotel lobby or the WeWork, right. And we never did it, probably because it was too much work. But if it was about the member experience and it was about a bigger, means to an end, then I think you just look at it differently. And I can only imagine what our members would have thought if we had fruit infused water in this space.
Well, here in Sacramento, we just by necessity, because it gets so hot here, that our filtered water system it can't keep up sometimes. So we would actually we would fill up those just to have that extra. And we do lemonade and water, and you just you just do, and I'm not talking about fresh squeezed lemonade.
Yeah.
So it's actually frankly easier than the people who are decidedly upset because even the filtered system on the really hot days can't keep up with the need to fill.
Oh, I bet Houston has that problem. I bet. And then I'm thinking of also to your point, it's probably a bit regional, but members who they love that they can sort of align their values with someone. And it's a way to differentiate, right? If you're in a market that has kind of a lot going on, it's a talking point for your marketing.
Right.
For members, I also think, potentially a talking point for recruiting, how difficult it's getting to recruit great talent for co-working spaces. I was talking to another operator earlier, and he was saying how recruiting's getting more challenging. And I said, I just had to drop something off at the FedEx. The FedEx is paying signing bonuses to get like the FedEx, like just the physical location, not a driver, but just the physical location. And when your values align, and our community managers who, might be younger and they care about the environment and it's one of their values, when you can align with that, it can be a talking point that might, on the margin help attract good people who, sort of more purpose aligned. I think it's a meaningful role anyway, but when you can align some of those other things, I think it might help.
Yeah, I was one of the things I'm doing, coffee and tea products are a big sort of area of struggle. And this weekend, I actually was working with a very local organic coffee roaster, and working out an arrangement for them to bring reusable containers of ground coffee to our locations. And I was meeting with the team there, and certainly a lot younger, older than them, but so that they're not trying to be dismissive, but they're young. And when I was telling them what I was trying to do, they were so wonderful. They were so excited about actually the marketing opportunities of being in our space and the synergies there. They are ready to deliver them to all of our locations and make it work how it needs to work. And the truth of the matter is their wholesale price of their organic, locally roasted coffee is within a very small margin of what it is to just get the standard packaged coffee. And so when you consider even the delivery and all of that, and then the marketing and the conversation on the tour of the special, locally roasted coffee that we're providing all day long. I mean, it's an easy argument. That's just a great option.
So Tracy, I feel like when we first talked about this, you mentioned like, oh, you might have some members like attorneys who, well, I want bottled water for my clients when they come in.
Mhm.
How do you reframe some of those
So I have had
shifts?
that, and I will tell you, having the conversation has ultimately never been a problem. And I'll talk about the fact that, well, as a business owner, it is ultimately a decision that I've made, that this is important. And there's people don't generally say, oh, I really choose to, pollute plastics. So right away people say, I get it, but I like having this. So when I say, look, this is a great, we will certainly bring in a water service and coffee service into the meeting room if you'd like. We do upcharge for that. So we will do that. Or the delightful thing for you is people need breaks and long meetings and depositions, and they want to be actually invited and made to feel welcome at your law firm, which is in our space. So we want you to bring them into the kitchen. We want you to invite them to partake of anything that we have as your/our guests here at this space. They can take their breaks and go get refreshers. They can fill up the coffee, whatever accoutrements they want with it. And the idea is just to make it a more enjoyable experience. And I have always had, when I have couched it that way, of, oh yeah, I like that.
No, you're sort of suggesting a level of hospitality that they might have with their clients that just is better for everyone.
Right. And I
Yeah.
think they're kind of saying, well, there's a hospitality in giving somebody their own individualized model. And I'm saying, let's up our game here. Let's make it a whole experience of inviting them. And so that's really what it's about.
Yeah, it's about thinking about it differently, which is a theme that you talked about at the beginning. So, what are some other sort of common single-use plastics that are found in co-working spaces that we may or may not realize we're using?
Well, certainly, the big cutlery, the coffee stirrers, any cups or dishes, a lot of stuff when you have community events and you want to make it fun. So you go to the dollar store and buy 50 plastic lays, as opposed to maybe coming up with some other, maybe making a fun experience and using natural flowers or cutting out colored paper or any number of things that could be fun and creative, and even bring some of the members in on some little crafty projects. Somebody may love that. It may be their outlet to just give them, and potlucks and things like that. Having some rules around community events, that's a good area of just starting to look for and say what you kind of are expecting within your space and making some different decisions there. um, you know Things that I'm looking at, soaps and detergents. It's so much fun to realize that there's bar soap for washing your dishes. You can get these really cool scrubbers.
Oh, so my bottle of Method or whatever is considered a single-use plastic.
Well, so the ultimately that would be better to replace it, but then the other option would be to get a really big bottle of something and at least do refill. And so that would be the thing. But yes, if you're getting a small bottle and using and tossing, it's single use. But there's so many things out there when you open your eyes and start looking at the things. And then the beautiful thing, again, you get to have this opportunity to have a conversation with your client in just a sharing way. Hey, we're really innovative here. Again, this is not about preaching, telling everybody don't use plastics. It's about the ideas and innovation and other ways to do things and showing somebody. And I think a lot of times people do want to do things differently for the world, but they don't know how. It's not easy. And when suddenly they have an alternative placed in front of them, they see it in use and they think, gosh, it's not a big deal. And they start using that home. They might really appreciate that. And so and so soaps, cleaners, those kind of things. Yeah. And then there's some of the harder stuff, tape, the envelopes that are, there's a lot. There's the individually wrapped mints, and we need to find other ways to have.
We talked about the individual coffee creamers. Okay, so do you have a solution? This comes up in my groups all the time, and maybe maybe you're going to say, take a break. I'm thinking meeting service. You want people to have coffee service in the boardroom. But if we can't use the single serve creamers, everyone has the hardest time keeping creamers cold enough in the thermos. But you have to put the thermos on ice.
No, you don't.
Depends on how long the meeting is.
Well, sure, but
Yeah.
if you have thermoses in the fridge, fill them up. I mean, we have such great thermos. I mean, my Hydro Flask can keep the water cold till tomorrow. And so there's so much good technology and reusable
Yeah,
sensors.
and sometimes I think it's just
I mean, I'm not saying put a Hydro Flask of creamer out there, but
Your corksicle.
interesting talking point. You know, I don't know, maybe you could or should, but there's a lot of, you can definitely keep
better
your
technology.
cream.
Yeah. And you just have to be willing to invest in it. I think that's part of it, because some of those serious thermoses are expensive. So
Right.
now you have to do the creamer and the oat milk and the soy milk and the
You don't have to do all those. You can, I mean, definitely a dairy is probably good. And then a lot of times we'll do, you know, it depends on the location. We'll do maybe one other, sometimes two, depending on how busy, just as a courtesy for those people that dairy is not helpful to them or something that they don't like. And it's not a big, it's not a heavy lift to get some stuff in your fridge.
Ooh, how about garbage bags? Is there a workaround
So
for
garbage bags,
trash
you know, one of
bags?
the things that you want to do, you know, Mara, she opened my eyes to the idea that every desk doesn't have to have a trash can, for goodness sake.
Oh, all the trash cans. I would also be in the camp of, right, we had trash cans everywhere in the space because
Right.
God
So
forbid somebody have to walk around to throw away their trash.
Mara Hauser, I mean, I was just like, oh, mind blown when she said, can have 4 people working in here. They do not need to have 4 trash cans, and you can have 1 or 2, and they can walk 4 feet and put something in. The other thing is, you know, to have some rules, I guess, when you onboard people about not that food and beverage, you know, beverages that are still full really shouldn't go in your in your desk trash anyway.
Yeah.
You know, please take them to the kitchen area. And frankly, there's a real cost savings, and it's not huge. Most janitorial companies do reuse the bags to the extent they can. So if it's just some paper that's in there, they generally dump it into a bigger
Yeah.
plastic thing, and then they leave that. And of course, I'm for that all day long. And they can't do it when it's food waste and things like that. So that would be why you would say that. And then frankly, in a lot of cases, everything doesn't need to be changed every day either. A 3-day a week cleaning of offices. And so to the extent that you could save some money, talk about ROI, and then it's about expectation. And this is when it's done, and this is kind of how we do things. And that stuff, if it's handled properly, can save cost savings for the co-working location, as well as something that just really does not bother members, with just some house.
So what about the inbound plasticware from ordering DoorDash?
Well, so you know, it would be nice if, like in California, there is some legislation pending that pending or may have. Anyway, I don't know where it is.
I think SFO, for example, is compost.
You have to ask.
Not compost.
Well, there's more that just actually, it's amazing that we'd have to have this, but where the restaurants would have to ask, do you want them before they put them in the bag? Which you'd think they do, just because it saves them money too every time you say no.
That's exactly. I feel like whenever somebody orders lunch, all of a sudden there are 25 plastic forks. Why?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So it's 2 things. It's the certification is for the co-working company, not the members. So somebody brings in their Starbucks, there's no police about, you know, that's their choice. It'd be nice that, you know, around the office there's a conversation and they start looking at things differently. But the one is, if you place orders, you start learning, and it's hard to remember, even because we're so used to just things happening, and to us is saying, I do not want this scent. You know, when they go to hand you a straw and you say, I don't need one.
I don't need it. Yep.
So it's just a matter of starting to say what you want in that way as the customer in that case. But none of it's none of the certification is an obligation attached to the members.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So yeah, so it's just the decisions.
And it's a little bit about maybe knowing your membership and knowing, I welcome any nudge around behavior that's helpful that I may just not be thinking about on my own,
Right.
And
Most people do.
so, yeah, I think most people do. I mean, I think there's a little bit of like, okay, we don't know, big brother the members, but I welcome being a part of a space that's acting really responsibly and can demonstrate and help me think about how to be more thoughtful. So,
And I'd hate to ever big brother. And I'm just, there's just in everything we do, there's so many areas in which we could big brother our members around all sorts of
yep,
behaviors in our
yep.
shared spaces. And the trick to being a really good operator is to learn how to not do that, yet subtly do that. Kind of move
Yeah.
things along, but
And
not
you may have members that have solutions too. Felicia Rubinstein,
absolutely.
who runs Haven, she has a member that does, maybe it's water filters for single use or for reusable water bottles.
Oh, okay.
It's something that a member does. And she's like, that's what we use.
Nice.
It's, yeah. I'm probably getting it a little bit wrong. I'll have to ask her to clarify, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes,
Well,
whatever.
if you're in upstate New York on well water, you could just fill up your bottle with a little of your own.
Oh, good point. I could take that. I would probably, yes. I was telling Tracy how my parents have a well and the water it's like sulfury. There's something about, right, the water that's available. So uh it's challenging to use fresh water at my parents' house. And that, yes, I'll have to ask Felicia for that. I'll send a case the next time I visit. I know.
So, but I know you're running out of time, and you get
Yeah,
to.
tell us how to, yeah, I know there's some co-working space operators that we won't share names, but who are jumping right in because it aligns with their core mission. So yeah, if we want to learn more, where do we go? We'll put all the details in the show notes.
So easiest, and it's easy to remember, as we talked about the name at the beginning.
Super.
Mean something super. How do you not? Now you're going to say it all the time because everything's just super. But www.super.ngo is our website, and my email is tracy@super.ngo. As we mentioned, I'm with Pacific Workplaces and CloudVO. So Tracy at either of those names, and you will get me all ways to center. And if you mention that you want to know more about it, as I know we've talked previously, I get really jazzed about this conversation. So any opportunity is delightful for me. So I am, if you feel that it would be good for you too, it would make me happy to have the conversation wherever I can.
So
So
don't hesitate to reach out. We'll put Tracy's contact info in the show notes. And if you get her on the line, also you can ask her any question about co-working, because she,
sure.
as we said, is a total OG. And Pacific, I was talking about our mentor program. I was like, Tracy, the mentor program that we run is for all the folks that want to operate like a Pacific, because you guys, I mean, you've been doing this for a while. You've got it down. You run really, really wonderful communities, but also from a business perspective, you have all the right systems in place, and you guys run like a well-oiled machine. So if you get Tracy on the line, ask her anything. That's my offer.
And before I go, the one thing, and we talked about this briefly, and if it fits into this conversation, you can. So I mentioned that I started this mission by taking a circular economy class. And one of the first things that absolutely just made me so excited is the fact that this circular economy, just quickly, is, we operate in what's termed a linear economy, which is we take resource from the earth, we make things from it, and then we use them, and then we throw them away, and then you repeat. So buy, repeat. Obviously, we're running out of resources. We're running out of all sorts of things to do that. The earth cannot sustain this. So circular economy is a way to take things, make resources, and then reuse, repurpose, remanufacture, and keep in the economy as long as possible. And ideally, at the end of the life, the waste actually becomes a resource for something else or the planet. So that's a circular economy, keep it going. And the coolest thing for me, because I was kind of on a down, COVID was a painful year, leaving the operations at the end of 2020. And realizing and being energized that the co-working industry is a circular economy industry. And it is, I just really want us to start everywhere we can marketing the fact that we build, there's so many, I mean, I've been doing this a long time, there's Regises all over Pacifics. We've been using, with small modifications, the same infrastructure for 15, 16 years with, updates. But when you think about the tragedy of tenanting and all of the throwaways of furniture and other resources that just get used for short periods of time and then just dumped. We are such an important industry to sustainability. And I really, really want us to start having that as a part of the conversation around co-working, as something that we just do by virtue of our business model that matters, and it's exciting. And however anybody wants to spin that, I just had to sort of say it and leave it there because it makes me so energized. It's just fantastic. And it's one more thing that's circular brings me back to my love of this industry. So I just had to say that.
Perfect. The perfect ending. Okay, Tracy, we will put all of your contact info into the show notes so anybody who's interested can reach out. And thank you for bringing this to our attention. I feel like this is one of those things, like it's an opportunity. And even if folks don't reach out, it's an opportunity to just think differently about what we're doing in our space and, changes that we might enact. So thank you for taking the time.
It's all upwards and onwards when you kind of have that vision of it. Yeah. And kind of anything's possible in that way. So, all right. Well, thanks, Jamie. It's always so delightful to talk to you. Even my first, this is actually not just my Everything Co-working first podcast. It's my full Virgin podcast experience.
Well, so, I suspect you're going to be on the circuit now. Thank you, Tracy.